Well, if you boil down all the principles of running a business to just one, it's got to be you have to make money to stay open. But because of the pandemic, that's not just happening for some businesses. One of those sectors that's struggling is childcare. 2/3 of London's nurseries in the British capital risk closure in the next year, and that could have a ripple effect on working parents, as Natalie Powell reports.
Nurseries are a place for learning, playing and making friends. But the UK's childcare sector is teetering on the edge of collapse, despite being partially funded by the government.
Nurseries are run by basically occupancy. So in a pandemic, you have no occupancy. The government doesn't up the funding anyway, and we're already behind. The landlords don't reduce your rent. We've just been told we've got a 100% rent increase in some of our nurseries. The additional costs then suddenly came down the line, so they didn't give us money for lateral testing, they didn't give us money for PPE.
Figures from the UK's Department for Education show that after the country's first lockdown, the number of children in nurseries or going to childminders was just 25% of pre-pandemic levels. Some parents who are working from home or who lost jobs decided to cut these childcare costs. COVID-19 made others more cautious about sending their children into environments where the virus could spread. And the knock-on effect has been a troubling one, particularly in the English capital.
There are more than 10,000 childcare providers like this one here in London. But according to a new report commissioned by the London Mayor, 64% of nurseries and 56% of childminders say their services are at risk of closure over the next 12 months.
Many in the industry say they're not surprised by these findings. They argue the pandemic has highlighted systemic underfunding in the sector. On average, childcare providers receive $6.80 per child per hour from the government. The Early Years Alliance says it's not enough.
For many years, the early years sector has been neglected. And I think all that COVID has really done is just exacerbate the problem. Then, of course, if these settings go by the wayside, then that will have a massive impact on both child development and, of course, the economy. At some point in time, we will need these settings to be available, whether they be childminders or whether they be group settings, but they will need to be available for people returning back into the workplace.
The British government has pledged $25 million of additional funding for nurseries to help children catch up with missed learning due to the pandemic. The money is part of its $900 million education recovery package. But by some estimates, the sector needs at least 4 times this amount. And there's a real risk that many nurseries and childminders will have to close. Without childcare options, some parents, particularly women, may have to leave the labour force. Natalie Powell, TRT World, London.